You've been through storms nobody saw. You've cried in silence when the world kept laughing. You smiled in front of the world, but inside you were breaking into pieces. Let me tell you something right now. That pain, it ends here. That cycle, it breaks today. That version of you who kept getting hurt, ignored, abandoned, used, walked on, that version is gone. Today, a new you is rising. You've spent too long letting people have access to your peace. Too long allowing people to hurt you just because you love them. Too long blaming yourself for the way they treated you. But let me ask you something real. When did you decide that your worth would be measured by the ones who couldn't see it? When did you start believing that broken people had the right to break you too? Listen to me. Nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again, because starting now, you're no longer giving them the power to do so. You see, healing doesn't mean the pain never happened. It means the pain no longer controls your decisions. It means the past doesn't get to write your future. It means you can stand tall with your scars and say, this happened, but it didn't end me. You didn't survive everything you've been through to stay in chains. You didn't cry all those nights just to let another careless soul tear you down again. You've earned your freedom. And that freedom begins with this truth. Not everyone deserves access to you. You've been giving your peace away for far too long. Not because you were weak, but because you were loyal. Because you loved with your whole heart. Because you believed in people even when they gave you every reason not to. You tolerated the disrespect. You made excuses for their behavior. You convinced yourself maybe they're just going through something, or maybe I'm too sensitive. But deep down you felt it. You knew they were draining your spirit. You knew they were disturbing your peace, and still you stayed. Still you tried to fix it. Still you put them before you. That ends now. You're no longer a sacrifice for people who wouldn't even lift a hand to help you. You're no longer going to bleed emotionally for those who can't even say, I'm sorry. That season of constantly being on edge, feeling small, walking on eggshells, begging for basic respect, that season is over. When you give people your peace, you give them your power. And when they hold your power, they can control you without even trying. That's why you're taking it back. That's why you're cutting off the access. That's why you're protecting your soul like your life depends on it, because it does. You are not obligated to entertain chaos just because it's familiar. You're not here to fix grown people who refuse to fix themselves. You are not required to carry burdens that were never meant to be yours. What they did to you wasn't your fault, but what you allow from this point on is your responsibility. Every time you say yes to things that disturb your peace, you're saying no to your own growth. Every time you allow toxic energy into your space, you're delaying your healing. So now you choose peace. You choose silence over arguments. You choose solitude over fake company. You choose truth over manipulation. Let them call you selfish, cold, distant. Let them talk, because they don't know what it cost you to get here. They don't know how many nights you cried. They don't know how you had to rebuild yourself piece by piece just to keep breathing. Your peace is not up for negotiation anymore. Your healing isn't on the table for compromise. The moment you stop trying to be everything for everyone, that's the moment you start becoming everything for yourself. And that version of you, that version is unstoppable. It used to be easy to let people in. You'd open your heart like a door without a lock. You'd welcome everyone, friends, lovers, even strangers, with the best parts of you. You'd give them comfort, support, attention, care. But now you see, some people only came to take. Some came just to feed off your light while offering nothing in return. They didn't care how drained you felt, as long as they felt better. And you kept giving. You kept loving them harder, thinking maybe that would change things, but it didn't. It just left you empty. It left you lost in a crowd of people who only showed up when they needed something. So now you're learning the art of silence, the power of walking away without announcing it, the strength in choosing your peace over fake love, over shallow friendships, over one-sided loyalty. You're not angry, you're just finally awake. You're not cold, you're finally aware. Your eyes are open now. And once you see what someone really brings into your life, chaos or calm, you can no longer pretend it doesn't matter. It matters. And from now on, you matter more. The old you would have apologized for setting boundaries. The old you would have second-guessed your feelings. The old you would have given second, third, fourth chances to people who never deserved the first, but not anymore. Not now. Now you understand that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to your peace. They're reminders that you don't have to be available for everyone every time. You're not a lifeline. You're not a fixer. You're not responsible for how others react to your growth. Let them call you different. Let them say you've changed. That's exactly the point. Growth is painful, but staying the same is lethal. You were dying in spaces where you couldn't speak your truth. You were suffocating in environments where being yourself was too much. So you shrank, you silenced yourself, you hid parts of your soul just to fit in. But now you're done. You're done shrinking for people who couldn't even reach your level. You're done making yourself small so others don't feel insecure. You're done being hurt and calling it love. And now you walk differently, not with arrogance, but with alignment. Because peace is not a place you find, it's a choice you protect. And that peace, it's priceless. It's waking up without anxiety. It's laughing without guilt. It's resting without fear of being judged. It's being alone and not feeling lonely. That kind of peace is what you've been fighting for. And if you have to lose people to gain it, then let them go. If you have to distance yourself to preserve it, then create space. If you have to be misunderstood to maintain it, so be it. Because once you taste peace, after years of chaos, you stop tolerating anything that threatens it. You stop answering calls that come with drama. You stop replying to messages that drain your spirit. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to be the hero in stories where you're only cast as the villain. That version of you, the peacemaker who keeps getting hurt, is gone. This new version walks away early, leaves conversations that feel heavy, doesn't show up where they're not respected. You owe it to yourself to protect your spirit. You owe it to the younger you who cried and didn't know why. You owe it to the future you who deserves rest. People will question you when you change. They'll say you're acting strange, that you've got an attitude now. But what they don't realize is that it's not attitude, it's awareness. You finally realized your peace is not a group project. It's not for discussion. It's not up for approval. You don't need validation to live in your truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing your mental health. Let them misunderstand. Let them call you distant. Let them gossip. Because if they truly valued you, they'd respect your boundaries. They'd honor your peace. They wouldn't force you to choose between them and your well-being. But when people see they can no longer manipulate you, they'll label your peace as a problem. Let them. It just means you're healing. It just means you're growing. You don't have to fight them, argue with them, or prove anything. Your energy speaks louder than words. And when your peace becomes your priority, everything else gets clearer. You see people's intentions. You recognize patterns. You feel your strength. You no longer walk in confusion. You walk in clarity. There was a time when your silence was mistaken for weakness. They thought because you didn't speak up, you were okay. Because you kept smiling, you weren't hurting, but you were. You just hid it well. You kept it together because you had no other choice. Because if you broke down, everything else around you would fall apart too. But now your silence is strength. Now your distance is protection. Now your no is final. You don't need to explain the storms you've weathered. You don't need to share every wound to be taken seriously. You just need to live like your peace is sacred, and it is. You've learned how to keep your heart soft, but your boundaries solid. You've learned how to walk away with love, but with clarity. You've learned that people don't have to hurt you twice for you to get the message the first time. And now, you're no longer a victim of other people's chaos. You're not caught in emotional whirlwinds that aren't yours. You're standing firm, calm, unbothered. Because you finally understand that real power is found in peace. Don't feel guilty for needing space. Don't feel bad for protecting your energy. You've been taught to feel shame for putting yourself first, but no more. Self-care is not selfish. Saying no is not rude. Protecting your peace is not mean. You don't owe anyone 24/7 access to your soul. You've been there, giving, sacrificing, holding space for everyone but yourself. And what did it leave you with? Exhaustion, confusion, resentment. Not anymore. You're reclaiming your time, your space, your energy. You're choosing environments that feel like growth, not war zones. People who pour into you, not bleed you dry. You're learning to sit with yourself and actually enjoy your own company, to be alone and still feel full. Because peace isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of self. And once you discover it, you'll never again tolerate what you used to. You're not better than anyone, you're just finally better to yourself. And that's where the shift happens. That's where the transformation begins. There's nothing wrong with having a soft heart. There's nothing wrong with loving deeply, but now you love with wisdom, you give with awareness, you help with discernment, because while your heart is still pure, your mind is now sharp. You don't offer your peace to people who abuse it. You don't sit at tables where your voice has to compete to be heard. You don't stay in rooms that make your soul feel small. You've been burned enough to know what fire feels like. You've cried enough to know the cost of ignoring red flags. And now, you listen to that voice inside, that gut feeling, that intuition that whispers, protect your peace. You've learned the hard way that peace doesn't come from people, it comes from within. And once it's built inside you, nobody can take it away unless you hand it to them. So you no longer hand it over, not to family, not to friends, not to lovers. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive, period. Every step you take now is intentional. Every move is protective. You walk different now, not because you're bitter, but because you're wise. You speak less, observe more. You react less, reflect more. You invest in people who match your energy. You give your time where it's respected. You allow love that feels safe. The chaos they once brought into your life, that's no longer your environment. That's not your atmosphere anymore. You are building a life that feels like peace, not pain. A life where your smile is real, not a mask. A life where your quiet moments are peaceful, not anxious. That's the life you deserve. That's the life you're creating. No more bending, no more breaking, no more burning out for people who wouldn't light a match to help you. You stand in strong now, centered, grounded, at peace. And the most powerful version of you, the one nobody can hurt, is the one who protects that peace like it's the very breath in your lungs. You've let too many people get too close for too long. People who didn't value you. People who saw your heart as an open door instead of a sacred place. People who mistook your kindness for weakness, your loyalty for blind obedience. And they took your time, your peace, your energy, your spirit. And you kept giving because that's who you are. You're a giver, a healer, a light in a dark world. But even light has limits. Even the sun has boundaries. Not everyone who knocks deserves to come inside. Not everyone who smiles deserves your trust. Not everyone who shows up deserves your seat at your table. You've got to start asking yourself, what are they bringing to the table besides appetite? Because if all they do is eat and leave you empty, they were never guests, they were robbers. And the truth is, you've been robbed for years of time, of peace, of emotional stability. But now, you're changing the locks, you're guarding your gates, you're checking the fruit before you let the tree grow, because access to you is not a right, it's a privilege. And not everyone qualifies. You were raised to be open, to give, to forgive, to love unconditionally. And somewhere along the line, you started believing that meant letting people walk all over you. That being good meant being available, that being kind meant tolerating disrespect. But you're learning now, you're growing now. You've seen the damage that comes from open doors with no boundaries. You've felt the emotional exhaustion of giving to those who only take. You've lived through betrayal disguised as friendship, manipulation dressed up as love. And now you're done. You're done explaining your value, done proving your worth, done making yourself small to make others comfortable. From this moment forward, access to you must be earned, not begged for, not demanded, not guilted into, earned through consistency, through respect, through truth. You've watered too many dead plants, hoping they'd bloom. Now you only pour into what grows, what pours back, what breathes life into you, not just drains it out. Because your spirit is sacred, your energy is expensive, your peace is priceless. And you're no longer letting anyone come in and leave trash on your soul. The people who deserve access to you will never make you question your value. They won't make you feel like you're too much. They won't gaslight your emotions or weaponize your love. They'll show up with open hearts, not hidden agendas. But too many times you've settled for less. You kept giving chances, kept turning the other cheek, kept hoping they'd change, and they never did. They just got more comfortable hurting you. And you got more numb, more tired, more confused, wondering why your love wasn't enough. But it was. It always was. They just weren't meant to hold it. They didn't have the capacity. They didn't have the character. And now that you've finally seen that, you're no longer accessible to everyone. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them say, you've switched up. Yes, you did. You've upgraded. You've evolved. And evolving means not everyone gets to come. Some people are only part of your history, not your destiny. Some were just chapters, not the whole story. And the ones you outgrow, let them go. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. You've spent too many nights overthinking, wondering if you were too distant, too cold, too unavailable. But the truth is, you were just reacting to being stretched too thin. You were responding to the exhaustion of being emotionally available to people who never truly saw you, people who only called when they needed something, who only showed up when it was convenient. You were available to everyone, but supported by no one. That's not balance. That's bondage. You've realized now that your presence is powerful, that your love heals, that your words lift, that your heart restores. And because of that, you must be selective, because the wrong people will exploit that power. They'll take your loyalty and turn it into a leash. They'll take your softness and try to manipulate it. So you've learned the word no. You've embraced the art of silence. You've discovered the strength in being unavailable, and not because you're bitter, but because you're better. Better at protecting your soul, better at setting boundaries, better at honoring yourself. And the moment you stop giving everyone access is the moment you finally start breathing. There's a weight that lifts off your chest when you realize you don't owe everyone a response. You don't owe everyone your time. You don't owe everyone your presence. The people who genuinely care about you will never make you beg for basic respect. They won't take offense when you need space. They won't guilt trip you into connection. And if they do, that's your sign. That's your exit cue. You've become too spiritually aware to tolerate emotional gain. You've healed too much to return to dysfunction. You've prayed too hard to go back to what broke you. So now you walk differently. You speak with intention. You protect your energy the way a lion guards its territory. And if someone doesn't understand that, let them be confused. You no longer explain your boundaries to people who benefit from you having none. You don't defend your peace to people who are comfortable in your chaos. You've moved on quietly, powerfully. And every day you stay grounded in that decision, you become more unshakable, more free, more you. Your availability used to be your downfall. You were always there, texting back, picking up calls, showing up, giving, fixing, helping. And what did you get in return? Often silence, often disrespect, often nothing. But now you understand. Your time is valuable. Your heart is rare. Your presence is a gift. And not everyone gets to unwrap it. Some people only want proximity to your glow, not responsibility for your pain. They want your peace, your strength, your wisdom, but they don't want to give anything back. So now you ask different questions. Do they pour into me? Do they reciprocate? Do they respect the access they've been given? And if the answer is no, you close the door, not out of spite, but out of love. Love for yourself. Because you're no longer available for connections that leave you empty. No longer accessible to people who treat you like an option. You're not being rude. You're being responsible with your soul, with your time, with your energy. And that shift, that's everything. You've outgrown the need to explain your glow. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you're unavailable. You're not cold. You're not arrogant. You're just focused. Focused on healing. Focused on protecting what you've built inside, focused on walking with purpose. And in this season, not everyone fits. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Some connections were only designed for who you used to be, not who you're becoming. And that's okay. Growth requires separation. Healing demands solitude. Transformation demands discipline. And if keeping your peace means keeping your distance, then so be it. The old you needed people to feel whole. The new you needs peace to feel alive. You no longer accept crumbs. You're waiting for the full meal, or you're not eating. And when you walk like that, you attract people who see your worth, not just your usefulness. People who want to understand your mind, not just borrow your energy. People who want to build with you, not break you. That's what access is about now. Alignment, not attention. You can't keep letting people who haven't done the work with themselves walk freely through your mind and heart. You've worked too hard to heal. You've gone too deep to be surface level again. You've learned what real connection feels like, and you've learned what manipulation smells like. And now you don't ignore the signs. You don't second guess the red flags. You don't romanticize potential. You honor patterns. Because history repeats when you let it. And access, real access, is based on history, not just chemistry. They can smile sweet, say all the right things, play all the right games, but your spirit knows. And when your peace feels uneasy around someone, listen, that's your inner self guarding your gates. That's discernment. And this time you're listening. You're done letting people walk in and out of your life like it's a convenience store. If they want in, they better bring more than words. They better bring consistency, effort, truth, or they can keep walking. Because not everyone deserves access. Not to your time, not to your soul, not to your story. The most powerful thing you ever do is stop begging to be chosen. You'll stop waiting for people to see your worth. You'll stop chasing closure. You'll stop explaining your heart because you finally realize you are the prize. You are the access point. You are the source of energy, love, insight, and peace. And anyone who gets near that must be qualified. You're not lonely. You're selective. You're not bitter. You're building. You're not distant. You're discerning. You're operating on a higher level now, one where your soul takes priority, one where your joy is protected, one where your circle gets smaller but your peace gets louder. And when people ask what happened to you, tell them this: you healed. You realize not everyone gets a front row seat in your life. Not everyone deserves backstage access to your heart. You stopped being a people pleaser and started becoming your own protector. That's power. That's peace. That's the real you. Healing. It doesn't come with a magic eraser. It doesn't wipe the memories away. It doesn't undo the betrayal, the heartbreak, the trauma. It doesn't delete the moments that broke you into pieces. But what it does do, it rewrites the story. It puts the pen back in your hand. See, for a long time, pain was the narrator. Pain told you who you were. Pain told you your value. Pain told you you'd never rise, never trust again, never love again. But healing comes in and says, no, 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 let's flip the page. Healing doesn't lie about what happened. It doesn't pretend the scars aren't there, but it changes the meaning. It takes what was meant to destroy you and turns it into something that strengthens you. That loss you thought would crush you, it taught you how to breathe deeper. That betrayal you thought you'd never recover from, it taught you how to spot fakes from a mile away. The pain is real, but it doesn't own you anymore. It's no longer the headline of your life. It's just a chapter. And healing is how you finish the story with power, not pity. There was a time you didn't know how to talk about what hurt. You just carried it in your body, in your smile, in the way you shut down when people got too close. You laughed on the outside, but you were bleeding inside. Because the world doesn't always give you room to fall apart. It wants you to move on before you've even had time to process. So you buried it. The heartbreak, the disappointment, the abandonment. You wore it like invisible armor. Strong on the outside, shattered on the inside. But healing doesn't ask you to pretend. Healing invites you to feel, to scream, to cry, to sit in the truth of what happened without letting it define who you are. It says, you don't have to carry this alone anymore. And little by little, that heavy burden starts to lift, not because it disappeared, but because your spirit grew strong enough to carry it differently. The pain's still there, but now you're in control. You decide how the story ends. And maybe that pain didn't make you stronger right away, but it made you real. It made you deep. It made you you. See, healing isn't a straight line. It's a dance between breakdowns and breakthroughs. Some days you feel invincible. Other days you feel like the wound just reopened. And that's okay. That's healing. It's not about pretending the pain never existed. It's about no longer being a prisoner to it. There were times you thought you'd never feel normal again, like the version of you before the pain was gone forever. But healing whispers, that version wasn't your final form anyway. You're becoming someone deeper, wiser, more compassionate, more alert. You don't let just anyone near your heart now. You listen more. You protect your peace. And even though the scars still sting sometimes, they don't control you anymore. You've taken your story back. You've learned how to breathe again, not because the air got lighter, but because you got stronger. That's healing. It's rewriting your story in your own voice. No longer the voice of pain, no longer the voice of shame, just the voice of truth. And the truth is, you're still here. You made it. You didn't break. You bent, you bled, but you didn't break. Sometimes the most powerful thing healing gives you is the ability to look back without crumbling, to look at the moments that crushed you and say, yeah, that happened, but I'm still standing. That's not weakness. That's victory. See, pain tried to make you bitter. It tried to harden your heart, but you chose healing. You chose to keep your heart soft even after people tried to break it. You chose to forgive not because they deserved it, but because you deserved peace. You chose to rise, not because it was easy, but because staying broken was too expensive. You chose you over and over again. And now when people see you smile, they don't realize that smile was carved out of nights you almost gave up, out of prayers whispered in silence, out of moments where you held your own hand and said, just one more day. That's the kind of healing that doesn't erase the pain, but it transforms it. It gives it meaning. It gives it purpose. And when pain has a purpose, it no longer has power over you. You stop running from it. You start owning it. You don't need to go back and change the past to heal. That's not how healing works. Healing says, let's work with what happened. Let's find gold in this mess. You lost people. You trusted the wrong ones. You gave too much. You stayed too long. And maybe you blamed yourself. Maybe you thought it was your fault, but healing taught you better. It taught you that it's not weakness to love deeply. It's not foolish to give someone a chance. You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. You weren't weak. You were human. And the person you were back then, they were doing the best they could with what they knew. And that's enough. You don't have to keep beating yourself up for how you survived. You don't have to keep rehearsing regret. Healing invites you to forgive yourself, to look at your reflection and say, I love you, even when you were broken, even when you were lost, because healing doesn't wait until you're perfect. It meets you in your mess. And slowly it helps you see you've never been unworthy. Not then, not now, not ever. Let's get real. Healing hurts. It rips the bandage off. It brings stuff up you buried deep. It makes you face the things you tried to forget. And that's why so many people avoid it. They rather distract themselves, stay busy, numb out, pretend. But not you. You chose the hard road. You chose to go within, to look at the pain not with shame, but with curiosity, with compassion. And that takes courage. It takes real strength to say, I want to understand this. I want to grow from this. You stopped blaming everyone else and started asking deeper questions. And that's where the breakthrough lives, because healing doesn't just fix what they did. It reveals what you believed about yourself because of it. And once you unlearn those lies, you start to rise. Not just survive, but thrive. You walk differently, talk differently, think differently. And even though the pain is still a part of your story, it no longer writes your narrative. You do. You write it now. There's beauty in the breakdown. There's wisdom in the wreckage. Healing shows you that pain wasn't the end of you. It was the beginning of something deeper. It revealed your fight. It showed you your fire. It uncovered the truth that you are not your trauma. You are not your scars. You are not what they did to you. You are what you chose to become after it. And that choice, that's everything. Because healing doesn't give you your old life back. It gives you a new lens, a new foundation, a new level of grace for yourself and others. And you start to see maybe the pain wasn't fair, but it wasn't final. Maybe it hurt like hell, but it also revealed heaven inside you, the part of you that wouldn't quit, wouldn't fold, wouldn't lose hope. You've cried your tears, you've screamed your screams, and now you're stepping into a version of you that was born from the ashes. Stronger, softer, wiser, whole. People will see your strength and never know the storms you walk through. They'll see your light, but never know the darkness you overcame. But you'll know how far you've come. You'll know what it cost you to be this free. And that's what matters. Healing is personal. It's quiet. It's sacred. It's not for applause. It's for survival. It's for peace. It's for joy that doesn't depend on anything external. It's waking up and realizing, I didn't just go through the pain. I grew through it. You no longer hate your past. You honor it because it shaped you, because it brought you here. And here is powerful. Here is present. Here is peaceful. You're not pretending anymore. You're not performing. You're not chasing validation. You're just being. And that's the most healed thing you can ever do, to exist fully, freely as yourself. You thought healing meant becoming who you were before the pain, but now you understand you're becoming someone entirely new, someone deeper, someone rooted, someone wise. The old you was innocent, beautiful, but this version of you, this version is unstoppable, because now you know what you're made of. You've been through fire and you didn't burn. You've walked through valleys and you didn't lose your way. And now when the storms come, you don't panic. You remember. You remember who you are. You remember what you've overcome. And even when the pain whispers again, you don't flinch. You smile, because you know the difference between feeling the pain and living in it. Healing gave you that. It didn't erase the pain. It gave you a new place to stand. And from here, you're building a new life, a new legacy, one that's not rooted in pain, but in power and peace. There comes a point in your life when you look in the mirror and realize You've been shrinking your voice, shrinking your power, shrinking your joy, all to make someone else feel comfortable, all to fit into spaces that were never built to hold someone like you. You started to believe that if you were too bold, too loud, too passionate, you'd be too much. So you dimmed your light. You muted your truth. You tucked your dreams away in a closet labeled someday. But let me tell you something. Real love, true love, it doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It doesn't demand silence when you were born to speak. Real love says, bring your full self. Bring your flaws. Bring your fire. Bring your dreams. I can hold that. And if someone has to lose themselves just to be loved, that's not love. That's control. That's fear. That's a prison dressed up as a relationship, and you weren't created for small spaces. You were made to expand, to grow, to rise. And from this moment on, you don't have to shrink for anybody, not to be accepted, not to be loved, not to be safe. You were not born to walk on eggshells. You were not created to whisper when your soul wants to roar. Somewhere along the way, somebody convinced you that your truth was too intense, your dreams were unrealistic, your voice was too loud, your love was too deep. And instead of realizing that their limitations had nothing to do with your worth, you believed them. You watered yourself down so they wouldn't drown. You clipped your wings so they wouldn't feel left behind. You wore masks so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable in the presence of your authenticity. But not anymore. That version of you, the one who begged for crumbs just to feel worthy, that version doesn't live here anymore. You're learning now that love built on fear will always keep you small. Love that requires you to be less will never allow you to become more. And you were made for more. More love, more truth, more freedom, more expression. The world doesn't need a quieter version of you. It needs the full, uncensored, boldest fire you. And the ones who can't handle your shine, they were never meant to walk in your light. Don't ever forget, shrinking to be loved is a betrayal to your soul. It might keep the peace for a moment, but deep down you feel it, that ache, that tension, that quiet grief of abandoning yourself just to be accepted. You smile when you want to cry. You nod when everything in you is screaming no. You stay silent to avoid conflict, but inside a war is raging. And you call that love? No, that's fear. That's self-erasure. That's a one-sided sacrifice. You see, love is supposed to expand you, challenge you, stretch you, yes, but never shrink you. Real love doesn't punish your honesty. It doesn't require a performance. It doesn't make you compete for attention or beg to be seen. Real love says, come as you are and stay as you are. So if you have to edit your soul just to be in someone's life, that space is too small for you. If your greatness offends their comfort, let them be uncomfortable. Because the longer you shrink, the more you disappear. And you weren't put on this earth to disappear. You were born to take up space. Emotionally, spiritually, loudly, boldly, fully. You know why you're tired? Because you've been trying to manage everyone's perception of you. Because you've been apologizing for your greatness. Because you've been shrinking, folding, adjusting, just to keep people around who were never ready for your full self. But let's be real, shrinking doesn't protect you, it drains you. It doesn't create connection, it builds resentment. You start to hate the parts of you you've buried. You start to feel disconnected from your own life, and eventually you forget who you are. You don't owe anyone that, not your family, not your partner, not your friends. You don't owe anyone your silence in exchange for their comfort. Your truth is not a liability, it's your power. Your dreams are not a threat, they're your calling. And your heart, your big, beautiful, raw, radiant heart is not too much, it's just right. For the right people, it'll be home. For the wrong ones, it'll be too much. And that's okay, let them go. Because you're done shrinking, you're done hiding, you're done waiting for permission to be yourself. This time, you're choosing you. Let's get honest. Some people only liked you when you were struggling, when you doubted yourself, when you stayed quiet and played small. Because the smaller you were, the more they felt important, the more they could control the narrative. But the moment you started to rise, the moment you started to reclaim your voice, suddenly they called you arrogant, selfish, changed. No, you didn't change. You remembered who you are, and that threatened them. But their fear is not your responsibility. Their inability to grow is not your burden to carry. The truth is, you were never too much. They were just too limited. And now you're seeing it clearly. The only people who are intimidated by your power are the ones who hoped you'd never discover it. But here you are, awakening, reclaiming, expanding. You're no longer asking, will they still love me if I'm fully me? You're declaring, if they can't love the real me, they don't belong in my life. That's what healing sounds like. That's what freedom feels like. You don't have to shrink anymore, not for them, not for anyone. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to outgrow people, places, and patterns that kept you small. You're allowed to walk away from rooms where you had to beg to be seen. And you're allowed to change the rules that were designed to keep you invisible. There is nothing noble about shrinking. There is nothing beautiful about betraying your truth. You don't have to play small just to make other people feel big. You don't have to settle for crumbs just to say you were fed. You deserve the whole meal. You deserve spaces that celebrate you, not tolerate you, relationships that nourish you, not drain you, conversations that ignite you, not silence you, in a life that feels like home, not a cage. It's not your job to be everyone's comfort zone. It's not your purpose to be everyone's safe harbor while you drown. You deserve to be safe too, seen, too, supported too. So from this moment forward, no more shrinking, no more apologizing, no more pretending. You're not here to play a background role in your own life. You're here to shine. When you stop shrinking, something powerful happens. You start attracting differently. You stop chasing people who don't see you. You stop explaining your worth to people who don't value you. And you stop seeking love in places that only feed your wounds. You start choosing peace over approval, alignment over attachment, purpose over popularity, and suddenly your world shifts. You begin to walk taller, speak louder, love harder, not because you're forcing it, but because you're finally free. You're living from your center, not from your fear. You're showing up as the full version of you, not the edited version that people once demanded. And guess what? The people who are meant for you, they show up too. They love your fire. They respect your boundaries. They hold your truth. And they never, ever ask you to shrink because they know you're not too much. You're just enough. For the right ones, you are more than enough. And for the wrong ones, you'll never be enough, even when you disappear completely. So stop disappearing. Start being. It's time to come home to yourself, to the version of you that remembers how to dream, how to laugh without fear, how to speak without shame. You were never meant to live caged by opinions. You were never meant to be a mirror for other people's insecurities. You were meant to shine. And maybe the world taught you to dim. Maybe life convinced you that being big came with too many consequences. But now you're unlearning all of that. You're reprogramming your spirit to know you are worthy of love as you are. You are worthy of taking up space, of being heard, of being celebrated. And when you believe that, you don't beg anymore. You don't settle. You don't cling. You choose. You choose your peace over people pleasing. You choose your truth over performance. You choose your freedom over fitting in. That's what reclaiming your power looks like. That's what not shrinking looks like. And baby, that's what real love, self-love feels like. You were never created to make yourself small for others to stay. You were created to rise so others could meet you at your level. Not everyone will, but that's not your loss. That's your filter. The ones who fall away when you stop shrinking were never really with you. They were with the version of you that made them comfortable. But now you know the truth. Shrinking doesn't create love. It creates resentment. It creates burnout. It creates a life where you feel unseen in your own story. And that stops now. You don't have to be anything less than who you are to be loved. And if love asks you to shrink, it's not love, it's fear in disguise. You are free now. Free to speak, free to dance, free to dream, free to love. Fully, boldly, loudly, and most importantly, authentically. Because when you stop shrinking, you don't just change your life. You give others permission to rise too. You ever sit in silence and realize how many times you gave your heart to people who wouldn't even look at you when you were broken? How many times you stayed up carrying someone else's burdens while no one even asked how your soul was doing? You bled emotionally, mentally, spiritually for people who never once reached for a bandage when you were cut open. You kept pouring love into cups that had holes in them, and you called it loyalty. You called it care. But deep down, it was self-abandonment. It was fear disguised as love, because you were afraid that if you stopped bleeding for them, they'd leave. That if you stopped sacrificing, they'd stop needing you. And now you're tired, not just in your bones, but in your spirit, because you've realized you can't save people who are committed to hurting you. You can't keep giving CPR to relationships that died a long time ago. You're done. Not bitter, not cold, just done. Done with bleeding for people who never once thought to ask, are you okay? You're not heartless. You're healing. And healing starts the moment you say, I deserve better than this. They took your kindness and called it weakness. They took your sacrifice and labeled it obligation. Every time you gave, they took a little more. And every time you asked for the bare minimum, they made you feel guilty. They had no problem receiving your love, your time, your effort, but they had every excuse in the world when it came time to show up for you. You became a crutch for people who were never willing to walk beside you. You were the emergency contact for people who wouldn't even answer a text when you needed help, and you accepted it. Because somewhere deep inside, you thought loving harder would eventually make them see your worth. But listen, you never had to prove your worth to someone who truly saw you. You were bleeding for people who brought knives, not bandages. And you kept hoping they'd change, hoping they see the damage, hoping they'd care, but they didn't. And the real shift happened when you stopped explaining your pain and started honoring it. When you stopped begging for love and started choosing peace. You're not asking anymore. You're not hoping anymore. You're healing now. The scariest part of waking up is realizing how long you've been asleep. You were living in a cycle of emotional labor, constantly overextending yourself, constantly playing the fixer, the peacemaker, the healer. You became the one everyone leaned on, yet when your world was falling apart, it was silent. Nobody checked in, nobody noticed. And the ones who did, they disappeared. When you had nothing left to give, that's when the truth hit you. You were bleeding alone, carrying wounds nobody wanted to see. You stitched yourself together while the people you bled for walked away clean. And you started asking questions like, why am I the one who always has to be strong? Why is my value only recognized in what I can do for others? That kind of love, that kind of one-sided loyalty, it's not love at all. It's emotional slavery. It's spiritual theft. And you're done. You've stopped sacrificing your sanity for people who feed on your pain. You've stopped explaining your heart to people who were never listening. You are not their bandage. You are not their rescue mission. You are a human being who deserves to be held, heard, and healed too. There was a time when your love was so unconditional it had no boundaries. You gave and gave until you had nothing left. You said yes when your heart was screaming no. You stayed when every part of you wanted to leave. You bled just to keep others warm. But now you see it clearly. Love without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Compassion without balance becomes emotional burnout. You learned it the hard way. Through the tears you cried in secret, through the sleepless nights wondering what more you could have done, through the ache of always being there for people who couldn't be there for you. And now you've had enough. You're not becoming cold, you're becoming clear. You're not giving up on people, you're choosing yourself. For the first time in a long time, you're looking in the mirror and saying, I matter too. That's not selfish. That's necessary. Because if you die saving everybody else, who's going to save you? From now on, you protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. You've earned your rest. You've earned your peace. And you've earned the right to stop bleeding for people who never once offered you a bandage. Some people only loved you when you were bleeding. They only came around when you were broken. Because that's when they felt most powerful. That's when they could be the helper, the savior, the fixer. But the moment you began to heal, the moment you started setting boundaries and raising your standards, they called you selfish. They said you changed. No, you remembered. You remembered your worth. You remembered you deserve reciprocity. And you remembered that love isn't just about how much you can give, it's about how much you can receive. The moment you stop bleeding, you stop being useful to them. That's how you know their love was conditional, their support was transactional, their loyalty was fake. And instead of chasing their approval, you've chosen peace. You've chosen solitude over manipulation. You've chosen truth over performance. And now you're no longer addicted to pain. You're no longer romanticizing struggle. You want soft love, peaceful love, mutual love. And if it doesn't feel like home, you're not walking into it. You're done setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. You've outgrown that version of you and you're not going back. You wore a cape for so long you forgot what it felt like to just be human. You became everybody's hero, everybody's emergency call, everybody's emotional sponge, and all you ever wanted in return was honesty, effort, love. But instead they took your superpowers for granted. They assumed you'd always be there, always forgiving, always fixing, always bleeding for their mistakes. But you're not bleeding anymore. You're healing now. You're learning how to put the cape down and say, I'm not okay either. I need help too. And guess what? That doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. You've carried the weight of everyone else's world. It's time to carry your own peace. You're not their therapist. You're not their parent. You're not their fixer. You're a person who deserves the same love you give so freely. So now you protect your heart. You filter your energy. You choose you. Not out of spite, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Because now you know not everyone is worthy of your bleeding. And not everyone deserves access to the most tender parts of you. It's crazy how the people you've cried for, prayed for, fought for, those same people turned their backs the moment you were in need. When you were in pieces, they offered silence. When you needed a hug, they gave you distance. When you needed grace, they gave you judgment. And still, for the longest time, you made excuses for them. You told yourself, maybe they don't know how to show love. But deep down, you knew. They knew how to receive it. They just didn't know how to return it. And now you've stopped pretending that one-sided loyalty is noble. You've stopped playing the martyr. You've stopped bleeding for people who would watch you die and still ask you for more. That's not love, that's exploitation. And now you're reclaiming your power. You're giving your love to the version of you who waited for it the longest, yourself. That's where the healing begins. That's where the bleeding stops. You're no longer chasing people who don't care if you collapse. You're walking toward peace, purpose, and people who know how to hold you when you need it most. This season of your life is not about who left, it's about who stayed. It's not about what you lost, it's about what you're gaining. You're gaining clarity, you're gaining strength, you're gaining peace. And more than anything, you're gaining you, the real you. The one who stopped bleeding and started building. The one who stopped rescuing and started rising. You spent so much of your life being everything to everyone, you forgot what it felt like to just be enough for yourself. But now, you've remembered. You've remembered that your value isn't in how much pain you can endure. It's in how much peace you can protect. You're not in survival mode anymore. You're not shrinking, sacrificing, or suffering just to feel loved. You're done with the bleeding. You're done with the performing. You're done with the proving. You are enough. And from now on, you only bleed for your purpose, not for people who wouldn't flinch if you flatlined. This is your healing era. This is your freedom era. And it begins the moment you say, no more. You've cried all the tears, carried all the burdens, worn every scar, but now you wear those scars like armor, not wounds, because they remind you of who you are. They remind you of what you've survived, and they remind you that not a single drop of your love was wasted. It was just misplaced. Now you're not bitter, you're better. You're not angry, you're aware. You see things clearly now. You see who clapped for you only when they needed something. You see who disappeared when you had nothing left to give. And you're not even mad about it. You're grateful. Because the bleeding made you wise, the pain made you powerful, the abandonment made you present. And now, you're not afraid to walk alone because you're walking whole. You don't need permission to rest. You don't need validation to heal. You're not everybody's savior anymore. You're your own sanctuary now. And the version of you who used to bleed just to be loved, they're gone. In their place is someone stronger, someone freer, someone who finally understands your love is sacred, your peace is priceless, and your healing is unstoppable. There was a time you thought life was just happening to you, that you were stuck in a story someone else wrote. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the abandonment, it all felt like chapters you never agreed to. You sat in silence, wondering why people kept leaving, why the world kept bruising you, why no one ever stayed long enough to help you heal. And somewhere along the way, you started believing you were powerless, that you were born to suffer, to survive, but never to thrive. But look at you now. You're still standing. And not just standing, you're awake. Awake to the truth that the pen has always been in your hand. You were never just a character in someone else's script. You're the author now. You don't have to replay the same pages. You don't have to accept pain as your identity. Yes, the trauma shaped you, but it didn't own you. What happened to you doesn't define who you become. And from this moment forward, you stop being the victim and start being the narrator. Your voice matters. Your choices, your story matters. And it's not over. It's just getting powerful. You've been through things people wouldn't survive. You've been the hero in a battle no one even knew you were fighting. You've cried yourself to sleep and woke up pretending everything was fine. You've carried burdens that weren't yours, fixed people who never said thank you, and rebuilt yourself more times than you can count. And yet, they still called you too sensitive, too much, too emotional. But the truth is, you were never weak. You were human. You were fighting battles behind your smile. You were being strong for everyone except yourself. But you've changed. You've awakened. And now, you're reclaiming the pen. You're done letting people write your worth in margins too small for your greatness. Done letting your past dictate your future. Done letting pain narrate your purpose. You've realized that the story you tell yourself about yourself is the most important one. And from now on, it won't be a story of lack, of fear, of waiting. It will be a story of power, of reclaiming, of rising. You're not the victim, you're the creator. And the next chapter? It's got your soul in every sentence. They tried to write your ending too early, said you'd never make it, laughed at your dreams, turned their backs when you needed them most. And you internalized that for a while, thought maybe they were right. Maybe your voice wasn't loud enough, your light wasn't bright enough, your soul wasn't strong enough. But now you see what they couldn't. You were never broken. You were becoming. Every disappointment was preparing you. Every rejection was redirection. Every tear was watering the roots of a version of you that would one day grow tall enough to reach your own freedom. That day is here. You're not waiting for someone to rescue you anymore. You're not looking for external approval. You've taken the pen and said, this is my life, and I'll write it how I damn well please. Your pain no longer has editing rights. Your critics no longer have a seat at the table. You've stopped auditioning for roles you already own. You are the writer, the speaker, the architect, and your voice is shaking the room now, not in anger, but in clarity. You used to search for someone to rewrite the story for you. A savior, a friend, a lover, anyone who would finally see you, finally love you, finally lift the weight. But now you realize you are the one you've been waiting for, the one with the strength to rise, the one with the vision to lead, the one with the courage to speak. You are no longer chasing healing from those who hurt you. You're not asking for apologies that never come. You're not rereading the same sad chapter hoping it turns into a fairy tale. You've turned the page. And what you're writing now, it's powerful, it's raw, it's real, it's you. Unapologetic, unfiltered, unbreakable. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to shrink for comfort. You don't need to play small in a story you were born to dominate. You've risen from the ashes, not to survive, but to lead. The author of your life doesn't beg, doesn't settle, doesn't wait. You create. And when you write from your wounds with wisdom, your story heals others too. Nobody sees the battle you fought to take back the narrative. They see your strength now and think it came easy. They don't know about the days you wanted to give up, the nights you wondered if this pain would ever stop, the moments you questioned your own worth. But even then, even in the darkest corners, you were planting seeds, seeds of self-worth, of vision, of boldness. You learned how to speak life over yourself when no one else would, how to show up for yourself in the silence, and now those seeds are growing into chapters of power. You no longer ask life to be easy. You ask to be equipped, and you are. You're equipped with wisdom that can't be faked, with discernment that sees through the lies, with vision that burns so bright it scares the ones who tried to keep you small. You are no longer the one being written about. You are the one writing it all down. And if they can't handle your story, they were never meant to be in the pages anyway. There's a difference between surviving and creating. Surviving is waking up every day and doing what you have to do. Creating is waking up and doing what you were born to do. And you've survived enough. You've spent years living in chapters written by trauma, by abandonment, by fear. But now you're writing in faith. You're writing in fire. You're creating new rules. You're flipping the narrative. You're speaking life over your dreams again. You're taking the broken pieces and building something that no storm can shake. And that kind of resilience, that's divine. That's legacy. You're no longer living in the shadows of what hurt you. You're standing in the spotlight of what healed you. And what you're writing now isn't just about you. It's about everyone who will rise because of your courage. You are not the victim. You're the blueprint, the map, the testimony. You're showing the world what it looks like when someone refuses to be defined by pain and decides instead to become power. You see, life will keep handing you pens, every loss, every failure, every betrayal. But it's up to you whether you use that pen to write tragedy or transformation. You've chosen transformation. That's not an easy choice. That's not a comfortable path, but it's your path now. And you walk it like you own it because you do. You're writing with intention now. Every no is a full sentence. Every boundary is a line in the sand that says, this is where I begin. Every time you walk away from chaos, every time you say, I deserve better, you're writing freedom. You're writing power. You're writing a story that says, I matter. And that's the real shift. You've stopped waiting for someone else to rescue you and started writing the chapter where you rescue yourself. And when they read your story years from now, they won't say they survived. They'll say they transformed. You're not the victim anymore. You're the voice, the creator, the author, the one who turned the pain into purpose and never looked back. You've outgrown the lies, the ones that said you were too broken, too behind, too much. You've outgrown the self-doubt, the people-pleasing, the fear of being misunderstood. Now, you move with confidence, quiet, bold, unapologetic confidence. Because you know who you are. You know what you've overcome. You've traded perfection for progress. You've traded pain for power. You've traded victimhood for victory. And in doing so, you've created a version of yourself that doesn't flinch when tested, doesn't shrink when doubted, doesn't stop when criticized. Because you know your story isn't for everyone, and that's okay. You're not here for applause. You're here for alignment. You're here to walk in purpose, to lead with light, to break generational cycles with nothing but your faith and your fire. You become the kind of person you once prayed to meet. And that's what being the author means. Writing with intent, living with purpose, and never letting anyone else hold the pen again. So when they ask what changed, tell them I did. When they say you're different now, respond, I'm finally me. When they try to pull you back into stories you've outgrown, let them read the ending alone. Because you're writing new pages now, pages full of strength, pages full of clarity, pages full of peace. This version of you no longer tolerates one-sided love, low-effort connections, or environments that dim your light. This version of you writes endings when necessary and chooses silence when peace is on the line. You don't explain anymore. You live. You don't chase. You attract. You don't shrink. You expand. Because you know you're not the victim of your story. You're the voice behind every victory, the hand behind every page, the power behind every word. You are the author, the one who rose from everything that tried to erase you. And you will never again hand your pen to anyone who didn't bleed for your breakthrough. You've come a long way through the storms, through the silence, through the sleepless nights when no one saw you breaking, but you still showed up. You've shed the skin of a victim and stepped into the power of your truth. You've stopped begging for love from places that only gave you crumbs. You've stopped shrinking just to be accepted by people who never knew how to value you. What once felt like the end has become the beginning of something extraordinary. Your healing didn't erase the past, it gave it meaning. It gave you a voice. It gave you strength. And now you no longer hand your peace to people who didn't earn it. You no longer bleed for people who wouldn't lift a finger for you. You're not cold, you're wise. Not bitter, but aware. And that wisdom is your power. You see things clearly now. You don't owe access to everyone. You don't owe softness to those who hardened you. You've taken your story back line by line, breath by breath, and turned it into something sacred. You are the author. You decide the pace, the plot, the ending. The pain no longer speaks louder than your purpose. And from this moment forward, you walk with boldness, with peace, and with an unshakable sense of worth. The old you is gone. And in its place stands someone who refuses to be broken again, not by people, not by circumstances, not by anything or anyone that tried to keep you down. You've already won. So keep writing, keep rising, and never forget you were always the story worth telling. Thank you for your time, for your heart, and for walking this journey with me. God bless you. Keep going. The best is still unwritten.